Okay, so you have the tools in order to put together an ERD as well as to read one. I would suggest, like I said before, just Googling ERD diagrams and getting used to looking at one and trying to figure out what it's trying to tell you. Start with simple ones first. But for now, we're going to actually walk through the example and see if we can't figure this out and put it together. That way you kind of see it all as I talked about it and doing it in kind of layers. Okay, so, and I apologize, this is going to be really ugly. If it was doing on paper, it'd be a lot easier. But c'est la vie. All right. So the first thing I want to do is to identify all of the entities and the relationships between them, figure out where they belong, right? So we had already identified our big boxes, which are going to be, I'm going to draw them out like this. And we have our department, we have our employees. We have our employees. I'm just shorthanding this because it's a demo and you don't want to watch me type everything ever, right? So we have our departments, employees, projects, and we have our dependents. Okay, we have relationships, and I'm going to freehand these. Okay, so we have several departments of the company. Each company has attributes and a particular employee who manages the department. So we know that there is going to be that between these two. We know that each department has one employee who manager. It's gonna be one and only one. We're gonna do that. And I'm gonna attempt to, this is gonna be, I'm gonna just put an M for manages. For your actual homework assignment, write it all out, but you'll also not be drawing it with your finger. Going backwards, which should actually just, we'll leave it there for now. Okay, so we've got the department manages, a department controls a number of projects. So we're gonna do that. There, I'm gonna put the C for controls the number of projects. We know that there's many projects because it just said so. Each which has unique Each employee has attributes. An employee is assigned to one department. So we're actually gonna do this. And I'm gonna put an A for assigned. Although you could do other adjectives like works in. And can join in several projects. So we're gonna connect employee to project. We know that they can be in several projects. We know that we want to record the start date of the employee in each project. And that's actually, okay, so I'm gonna put a J for joins. And this start date, it's calling it out. That's actually a really good hint that is going to be the attribute on a relationship. So I'm going to write SD for our start date. We also need to know the direct supervisor of each employee. We already talked about, or we just talked about, how employees can supervise other employees. So I am going to slip that in right here. And we can supervise other employees, right? So that's going to be going back on itself. And again, this is super ugly because it's on a drawing pad. Okay, and then we want to track the depends of each employee. They have dependents. Okay. So here we have the basic structure, right? Let's go ahead and think through the cardinalities, all that kind of stuff, so we can get these relationships figured out, and then we'll add in our attributes. So department, okay, so sorry, so department has multiple employees. Has multiple employees. Can it have no employees? Probably not. So we're gonna do a little line there. The employees can probably only be in one department. They probably have to be in one. No zeros. We know that the department has, let's see, so each employee can only manage one department. Each department has one manager. So this is a one-to-one. Probably can't have zeros on either of those. So between departments and projects, a department, do they need to have a project? I don't know. So for me, I'm going to stick a 0 on there just because that's my best guess. I don't know for a fact if they need to have projects. I'm going to stamp that I would go back and talk to my client and ask them that question. A project, can it be assigned to multiple departments? Maybe. So I'm going to do that just to play safe. Can it be assigned to 0 departments? Probably not. So I'm going to do that. Between employees and projects, we know that employees can be assigned to multiple projects. We already talked about this. Do they have to be? I don't know. So I'm going to put a 0 for there just to be safe. Can projects be assigned multiple employees? Yeah, I hope so. That would be terrible. Can it have no employees? I don't know about that. Again, depends on how they do the size. You probably need at least 1 employee, though. I'm gonna guess that. And the employees can have multiple dependents. They can totally have 0. Each dependent can have multiple employees, and they can't have 0 because it's connected, because it's a weak entity. And there we go. We know that this is a weak entity, so I'm going to indicate that like that. Okay, let's see. So we now have to deal with all of our attributes. I'm going to do these with shapes because this is going to get hairy. So each department has a unique ID number, name, location, and we know that the manager, we know that it has a manager. So that's actually going to be captured this way. I'm not going to fill in the bubbles because you're watching me do this. But what I will do is, we know that we have an ID number, and that one will be marked with an underline on the ID number to indicate that it is our primary key. Going back to circles, our department controls a number of projects, each which has a unique name and unique number and a budget. And again, given those choices, we do want so that's going to be our number. Our unique number is going to be the primary key. We don't want the name. We want to go with numbers. Okay. And all these get connected to the entity that is associated with. Okay. So going back to the drawing tool, so employees. So we know that employees have names, they have ID numbers, that's the one that we want for our primary key. We have an address, we have salaries, and we have birthdays. Great. Okay, so that's going to be our ID, primary key. Each of these connects down. You notice that each of our beautiful, strong entities has its own primary key, which is super important. We know that our birthday is a stored attribute. We're probably trying to get the current age off of that, which would be our little dashed one, but our business rules don't actually talk about that. So we're not going to add that in just willy-nilly because we don't know if that's what they are trying to do with it. They might just be trying to celebrate your birthday because offices do stuff like that. Okay, we already handled the direct supervisor for each of the employees. Okay, dependents. We know that, let me switch tools back. We know that we have names, we have birthdays, the relationship with the employee. I'm assuming that means something like child or other types of dependents. I don't know. I'm not that much in HR that I would know the answer to that. You notice that this one does not say that it has its own unique ID. It's because it's a weak entity and they're doing this composite ID thing where they're taking the primary key from the employee and bringing it down to the, oh, I wrote department. That, well, dependent. There you go. That's because they're doing this composite key where they're going to combine like the name or something with this. You could also create your own ID for it, like have the computer generate that and connect them together. But a composite key for stuff like this is pretty common to see as well. Okay, let's see. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. We lucked out on this one in that we don't have anything more complicated than a binary. We do have one unary recursive one. You notice that there's a situation where we have two different relationships between an entity, and that's because these have very different rules. One is a one-to-one, and then one is a one-to-many type relationship. So they kind of have to be separated out, as well as the business rule being an assign versus a manages situation. Okay, so this is, you know, a really ugly version of what you'll be doing for your homework assignment. Of course, filling in all of the bubbles with the actual, you know, name. You'll want to spell out department and employees and all those things in order to, employee singular, in order to flesh it out. And then you'll just take a picture of it and either add it to a Word doc or whatever. I'll talk about that in a second anyways. But yeah, that is the process.